So for the past few days, I've been seeing and commenting on this photo set on Tumblr that was about Superman, and going back and forth with some people about Superman as a character, and the discussion got me thinking not just about Superman, but on the concept of Mary Sue, and how I feel the term is widely misunderstood by a lot of people. The commonly agreed upon shorthand for Mary Sue is usually that a character is perfect. While this is generally enough to get the concept of a Mary Sue across, there are some key elements that are missing from this definition by just saying a character is perfect, and I feel that this oversight is where a lot of people tend to misconstrue some great characters in fiction are Mary Sues, when they actually aren't. The true definition of a Mary Sue would be a character so perfect that they are never challenged by the events of the narrative. This might seem like an arbitrary extension of the original definition, but it changes everything when you start examining certain characters that could fall under the original definition. A lot of people have been claiming that Twilight Sparkle is, post-season 3, a Mary Sue, because of her elevated status to Alicorn Princess for magical mystery cure, and her apparent removal of her biggest weakness, her penchant for paranoia, in Games Pony's play. Now, personally, I think that Twilight is still going to be as paranoid as ever, considering that the little breathing trick Cadence taught her failed in that very same episode, and that she was still freaking out in the beginning of Equestria Girls, but that's neither here nor there. The important thing to take away from this is that you cannot become a Mary Sue. If you have character weaknesses and eventually learn to overcome them, that isn't becoming a Mary Sue, that's character progression, and an essential part of characterization in literature. Throughout all of seasons 1 through 3, Twilight was constantly challenged, whether it be from external forces like Nightmare Moon, Chrysalis, and Discord, conflicts between her and her friends, or within herself from her own paranoia and high expectations. Twilight as a character never became uninteresting because she was never too good for the events around her, and therefore was never perfect. And obviously, as shown in Equestria Girls, Twilight, even as an Alicorn Princess, will continue to be challenged both internally and externally, so even now she still isn't becoming a Mary Sue. But let's go examine a character for a second that essentially is perfect, the one that got me on this train of thought in the first place. Superman. Superman is a very idealistic character in his proper presentation. He's been nicknamed the Big Blue Boy Scout for good reason. He's ethically flawless, always considerate, overtly kind, and the perfect embodiment of goodness. That is Superman at his most intrinsic. He is the good. Sounds like a Mary Sue character though, right? We should definitely darken him up a bit, make him a bit more brooding and doubtful about himself, his powers, and his place in the world. That'll make him a lot more realistic and interesting. No, because Superman, for all of his perfection and near limitless power, was never uninteresting to begin with. The key to keeping an otherwise perfect character from delving into the realm of the Mary Sue is to always keep their antagonist sufficiently challenging for them. Superman as a character is static and unchanging, since he isn't supposed to be a literal human character, but rather a personification of an idea, and an example of that virtue at its highest point. But just because he's idealistic instead of realistic, doesn't mean he isn't interesting. Superman, and thus the ideals he represents, are constantly challenged by external forces that are just as powerful as he is, and the tension in Superman's stories, and thus our interest in him as a character, is seeing how a pillar of idealism can withstand an equally powerful force that is attempting to undermine it. Lex Luthor is a great representation of Superman's opposite: greed, power, and materialism. Luthor is a much more intelligent and cunning character than Superman is, and when the two clash, it's not just a clash of characters, but a meta-clashing of opposing ideologies. This happens anytime Superman battles another foe, even when the battles are much more literal when the conflict boils down to a slugfest between Superman and Darkseid. The interest in a character like Superman isn't from them growing, but from them resisting corruption. And these conflicts carry weight because the agents of their opposition are powerful enough to cause doubt as to the outcome of the conflict. In this regard, Superman's massive abilities don't really mean all that much if his opponents are just as strong. He may be incredibly powerful compared to us, and in terms of raw scale, but he isn't overpowered because his opponents are just as well off as he is. As an exercise of this point, let's compare Superman to one of the most notorious Mary Sues of modern times, Ebony, Darkness, Dementia, Raven, Way of my immortal infamy. From a strictly observational perspective, Superman is far more powerful of a character than Ebony. Ebony, in the context of her world, is just a normal human, albeit with magical abilities since this is a Harry Potter fanfic. Note that that last line was in quotation marks. However, from a literary standpoint, their abilities are actually quite opposite. Superman constantly struggles against opposition and is repeatedly tested by his foes, and doesn't always succeed. Hell, Superman is even killed off at one point. So, from a thematic standpoint, Superman is far from all-powerful, despite his near-limitless abilities. But Ebony, from a literary standpoint, is untouchable, because throughout the entirety of My Immortal, she waltzes from one conflict to the next and gets exactly what she wants almost instantly and without issue. Despite the scope of her abilities being far smaller than Superman's, in the context of her story, she is far more powerful than Superman ever was, and ever will be. And this is why characters like Superman, Dragon Ball Z's Goku, Star Trek's Captain Picard, and now arguably Twilight Sparkle can be perfect, but still not Mary Sue's, because they never rise so far above the obstacles of their environment that they are no longer challenged by them. A true Mary Sue is a character that is so much more powerful compared to the forces around them that they no longer have any risk of being challenged by them. Without any challenge, conflicts these characters get wrapped up in carry no tension. Without that tension, the conflict becomes pointless and uninteresting, and consequently, so does the character. A Mary Sue character is one that is causing the viewer distress out of boredom, not perfection. Now I have a question for you guys. Which character do you like that, for all intents and purposes, seems perfect, and could be misconstrued as a Mary Sue? Let me know in the now broken comment field below. Till next time, I'm Tommy Oliver. Stay curious.